Welcome to the Run from the Norm podcast. On this podcast, we explore what motivates and inspires unique individuals to embrace creative self-expression, one run and one adventure at a time. I'm your host, Jake Reynolds. So this conversation was a fun one for me, and I think my guest, Dan Button, would say the same thing. I only knew of Dan from watching him gobble up local Strava segments before I cold DM'd him, asking if he would be willing to chat with me on the podcast. He graciously accepted, and we agreed on a good time to chat. So we met face-to-face about 5 minutes before we hit record, and Dan did not disappoint. Here are a few quick notes about Dan. He is a 2:33 marathoner. He took second place at the race to Robie Creek in 2017. He ran a 3:03 50K at the 2021 Weiser River Trail Run, which was the 8th fastest 50K in the nation for the year. He's competed in the U.S. Track and Field Trail Nationals. He's a co-race director for the Boise Front Trail Races, and he also holds the fastest known time for the full 23.5-mile point-to-point Boise Greenbelt run from Eagle to Lucky Peak in 2 hours and 36 minutes, which is about a 6:38 per mile average, and then kept on going on a casual total of a 40-mile run that day. Please join me for a fun conversation with a guy who is equally as passionate about spreading the love of running with others as he is getting outside to enjoy a run of his own. I have to say, Dan Button truly does run from the norm. My guest today is Dan Button. Dan, thank you for taking the time to join me. We've crossed paths on Facebook. We haven't actually met face-to-face until 5 minutes ago, so this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, likewise.
So let's start out kind of early on and tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what got you to where you're at now.
Yeah, it's a long story and a short story, I guess, but I'll give the medium length here.
All right, as long as you want.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Hampshire, over in northeast top of the country. Grew up in central New Hampshire. It's a lot of lakes, mountains, rivers, playing in the woods. Some of my earliest, fondest memories are just building my own log cabin out behind our house. Don't know whose property it was even on. I'm sure it was past the limits of our half-acre lot.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you don't care.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Were you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I have 5 siblings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, pretty big family. I'm the second youngest. So I had a lot of, hand-me-down ideas and items,
I know that well, yeah.
Some of the ideas not so great, but it was fun growing up in a large family, just built-in friends. And
was everybody pretty active, or were you kind of an outlier in that regard?
I was probably an outlier in the opposite direction, actually.
Oh, really?
So I think all but one of my siblings played sports at a high school level, and then, younger up through high school, if not through college. My younger sibling didn't. And then, I didn't either. So I wasn't.
What were you like when you were young?
I was a lot of just in my own head imagination, that type of, so a lot of outdoor playing, but it was, it was in costume dressed as a hobbit or,
Nice. Deep in the imagination.
Oh yeah. Getting all the neighborhood kids that were around our age to do whatever I wanted them to do as far as, what games we're going to play and forts we were going to build and all that.
Nice. So you've moved yourself into running a little bit later, and we'll get into that because I do want to ask you about your first 5K and your running attire, your footwear at that race. But so if you weren't into running earlier on in your youth, then what was your, let's say, your secret talent? Everybody's got a passion when they're young. Did you, were you a great artist? Was it just you're in the imagination and you had great ideas?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think if I had to label just one thing, it's probably the same as what it is today, where I have a pretty good ability at going really deep into whatever I'm interested in. Right?
Interesting.
So
okay.
At the time, it was, like I mentioned, the imagination and fantasy, and I was writing my own Lord of the Rings fan fiction, and
Oh, really?
at age 12, and I probably wrote 20 chapters of a book and subsequently lost it, which is a shame. But yeah, just going really into whatever my hobby was.
Interesting.
So I went from that kind of period up into high school, started getting really into cars. So my first job, basically, I got a job to save money to buy a car. That was I think a DVD player first, because those were the times.
You got to get that. So what car were you saving for?
I think my first car, I know, was a 95 Honda Civic.
Okay.
And that was just, to get around. But then I got the kind of bug and started tuning and
what all did you do to it? That's my other passion. I grew up building cars, so you start talking cars, and I'll go left turn all the way.
Nothing I'm proud of on the Civic, just all the annoying mods like the exhaust,
loud exhaust,
and the intake, and just simple stuff. But it kind of lit the fire for going really deep into that new hobby. So kind of moving on from there, I ended up going to college basically just to get a business degree, just to learn how to be able to start my own business, which was a performance automotive garage. So that was just like, I mean, when I go deep, it was all the way through high school, all the way through college. Ended up founding a business with a couple of friends where we were doing, importing engines from, Japan.
Were you really?
And doing engine swaps and high performance, built a couple of race cars, and had some other friends that we actually got to go race across a couple different tracks in the East Coast.
What kind of racing were you doing?
Like time attack. So just all out single lap, against the clock. So
I used to work as a business manager for a speed shop around here, and I grew up building hot rods. I've got my own little shop that I started too. I think every car guy they want to have their speed shop, whether they actually do anything with it or not. But it sounds like you actually did.
Yeah. So we ended up renting out a pretty good garage space. First started at my parents' house and did that for a couple of years. And then right about the time when we went a little more legit, we were all still working full-time jobs, it's just a passion. And we were taking business, and, we had a business LLC and everything, but we were doing it kind of on the side. And we got to that step where it was like time to really go all in.
Yeah.
And I had just lost the itch. Like the passion had just gone away.
What happened?
It had become work, it wasn't fun. It was just, I was working, 40 hours a week and then 60 hours a week on every night. I mean, it was no sleep. It was just fully in. And I think as soon as that passion starts to die away a little bit, you're in trouble.
And it starts becoming work.
Yeah, it starts becoming work.
Yep.
And it wasn't paying. And my full-time job didn't pay well at the time either. And I started thinking, I need a future.
Yeah,
I'm getting into my mid-20s. This was fun through college. And now I'm getting to my later 20s. I need to start.
So this might be a good segue thing. So if you're getting into your early to mid-20s, I think if I understood the story correctly, it was about when you were 24 that you had a wild hair to run your first 5K, and you ran it in your dad's basketball shoes from what I saw on one of your YouTube videos, I believe.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so what happened was I left the business with my friends that I had. They kept going, we were left on good terms, and I said, all right, guys, I'm just done. I'm not into the car thing anymore. And I don't exactly how long had passed, maybe a few months had passed. And I heard about some charity 5K, this really sad story. A young teacher had passed away suddenly. They were doing a 5K in her honor. And at the time I was going to this church where we were using space at the school where the 5K was. So it was just such a random, things all lined up where I heard about this.
Serendipitous then?
Kind of serendipitous. And I was talking to my dad about it, and he's like, you should run it. And I'm like, well, why not? I've never run a 5K.
Was your dad a runner? I mean, if he's got basketball shoes for running.
Yeah, he's big into basketball. Okay. Even today at almost 80, he'll still try and hoop when he can. So
nice.
But yeah, he had run cross country in high school, and he still had these memories of it. It was just fond memories, and played soccer. And my older siblings had played soccer and basketball, and none of them have ever run, but running sports, right? So
did you tell everybody at this point, I'm going to do this thing, or was it just something you put your head down and you were going to do it quietly and see how it went?
I think I knew a couple other folks who were doing it, not like close friends, but it was just kind of one of those things. This seems like a good cause. We'll go out and spend. I figured, if I walk it, it's not going to take that long anyway. So yeah, there wasn't really much thought. I had no idea it was going to launch.
Sign up and go.
Some new thing that'd go even deeper into than anything yet.
And how did it go?
I think about as well as anybody's first 5K. I mean, I think I ran 28 minutes. It wasn't one of those situations where you run it. You hear some of these folks like, oh, my first 5K was slow. It was only 15 minutes, and you're like, yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it wasn't one of those. It was like an average 5K, right? It was just but I
something
finished
clicked in you, huh?
Yeah, I finished and I thought, that wasn't terrible. And most of the people I'm talking to finishing and other friends who've done some running, they're like, running's terrible. So I thought, this is kind of weird that I didn't hate it, because it seems like most people go to the gym and it's this necessary evil on the treadmill or something. And I was like, yeah, it wasn't bad.
Did you train for it, or did you just walk up to the line and went for it?
I don't think I ran a mile first, if I remember correctly.
Really?
I think I just went
out and did it.
I mean, like I said, I had to borrow the shoes. So
Yeah.
like you said, yeah. So,
So what happened after that?
I think I saw a few more like just local charity 5Ks. And I think that was enough for a little while. If I remember correctly, it's like six months or so. I did maybe a 5K every other weekend. So I kind of got more into it. I started looking at, what's a quick 5K? How can I start chopping some time off of what I'm doing, seeing if I can get any better at it? But it was still, at that time, it felt like a passing interest, right? So I'd gotten pretty big into lifting weights during the car end of the car kind of season, and then into that time when I wasn't really doing much. So I'd started to put on some muscle, and I was feeling pretty good about that. So the running kind of seemed like, well, if I run a few miles before I lift, people say you should do cardio first. Yeah. And I had a couple buddies who were really into the weightlifting side, and they were like, oh, we'll go run 10 minutes with you first. So it just kind of became something like that for, maybe 6 months or so. And then I read Born to Run, of course, at that time. I think
changed everything.
I started running in like fall up through about Christmas. And I want to say my mom bought me Born to Run for Christmas. And January, February, I'm reading the book, going through it like, I got to start running 100-mile races. Man, this is the...
So what was it about the book that really spoke to you?
I think it was the first running book of any kind that I'd read. So it was just kind of the idea of, all the things we love about running, learning about them for the first time, learning about the mindset and these superhuman people that can just run all day and all night. And yeah, it just kind of appealed to me being able to see, because I feel like some of my other hobbies I'd seen, how creative I could get, what I could build. And I'd never done any, sports of any kind. So it was like, well, I haven't explored what my body can do yet. I've done all these other things, and I've had all these other interests, but I've never really tried to see what I can build my body into. Right. So, and the lifting, I think, kind of triggered that. And, before the running,
started seeing some results.
Yeah. And I'm like, my body looks different now. That's fun.
And this is all as you're kind of rolling now into your mid-20s.
Yeah, this is my mid-20s.
And so are you finished with college at this point, and you're working full-time?
Yep, working full-time. I was working for the state of New Hampshire, so worked in the state house in New Hampshire doing administrative service stuff for, mass mailings and state, mail stuff. That's the way to explain it. Yeah.
The deep dive of state legislature. Yeah.
Yes. So.
And then, so you're doing that. Then you're working in the legislature. You're starting to get into these 5Ks, and you read Born to Run, and things start to look a little bit different. At what point now are you starting to look at running as something more than just a hobby, and as a potential opportunity to really deep dive now and see what you're capable of and take it to that next step?
Yeah, I think I started. I read Born to Run, thought I'm going to run all these crazy ultras. And then started looking up like, well, what's the stepping stones, right? Because I thought, with my cars, my first car was a Honda Civic. It wasn't anything I was proud of. But then I got this Nissan, and I swapped a Skyline engine into it and built this little hot rod. I thought, okay, so what do I start with? I did some 5Ks. I think I'd run, 6, 7, 8 miles at a time by that point. And one of the stepping stones to me before running an ultra would be to run a full marathon.
Okay.
So living in New Hampshire, right around that time, I got a new job where I moved down to Massachusetts for the job. So
and how far away is
about an hour and a half from where I was living at the time. So not a big move, but geographically a little bit closer to Boston, where suddenly you start thinking, I want to run a marathon. I want to run, and what comes next is, well, I want to run Boston Marathon. Any runner I talk to, even in New Hampshire, all across New England, if you talk about running, you talk about running Boston. That's
interesting.
It's you're in Boise, you talk about Robie Creek, right? It's like that, but 100 times bigger. I mean, you talk to some casual person in a grocery store and you say, I ran a 5K, and they're like, when are you running Boston?
But it's not an easy thing to do now. So you're going from running these 5Ks and now, looking at potentially getting a little bit farther. Now you're starting to dream of Boston.
Yeah.
So what do you do at that point?
So I went online, downloaded a training plan, how to run a marathon, looked at the time I needed to run in Boston, which was, I think, 3:05, but you have to go usually a little under that to actually get in because it sells out, So I said, all right, I got to run a 3-hour marathon. So I went and did my first marathon. I signed up for a marathon. I did a training plan. So I put a little forethought into it. I was kind of getting a little more advanced.
And then how long was your training plan?
Like 3 months,
okay.
Standard, whatever it is, 20 week or something like that. So I picked out a plan that said 3:30 because I thought, okay, I'm not going to get in this year anyway because of when it when it lines up, you have to sign up for Boston like 6 months before, and there's a qualifying window. So I knew I wasn't going to hit the qualifying window anyway. So it's like I can try one at 3, see if I can run 3:30, because at the time my 5Ks were at like 8-minute pace, maybe 7-minute pace by then. Like, gotten a little quicker.
That's pretty mature of you to look at it that way, because I think most people, and myself included, I'd think, okay, I've got 2 weeks to get ready for this massive effort. I'm doing it. I'm all in, and I'm going to qualify. But you actually looked at it as, this is going to be a learning opportunity, and this first one is going to be my step into seeing what it's like. And you set a realistic goal, which I think is actually pretty impressive. So how did that go?
It went pretty good. I set the goal like that, but we all have dreams of I'll run a lot quicker. But no, I ran about 3:31 and change. I had to walk at mile 20 till about 24, and then I had two of my best friends from like high school showed up, and they were driving alongside me in the car. One of them's wearing his Bruins jersey, jogging next to me, eating a Snickers, and I just stole his Snickers and ate it. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm about to pass out. I've never felt this way before, 22, 23 miles in at that point.
Anything I can get into my face right now at this point.
Ate his Snickers and was able to start jogging again till the finish and ran like 3:31. So I'm talking, again, I felt like it was not a quick process, but a gradual process where I started seeing maybe there is a little talent here too. I'm working hard at it, but I'm like, oh, that isn't a terrible time for your first one, So you said a little maturity. The maturity went away right after that. I think a month later, I did my second marathon, and it was like in a blizzard. I got a fever the night before, still did it. It's terrible idea.
I don't know. It's like with the snow that we've received here recently, I look at it as an adventure opportunity. It's time to go out and play. And I actually saw a video that you had just posted a couple of days ago too about getting out in the winter. And it's all part of the fun.
It is.
So you do this a month and a half later after your first Boston. Now
my first marathon, not Boston. Yeah.
Okay. Off of your first
so I'm
marathon.
still working to get into Boston at this point. Yeah.
And so you finished that first marathon, and you had said that you get pretty deep into things when you were younger, maybe analytical, and you kind of breaking it down. So you're doing this coaching plan and you finish this first marathon. Are you tracking all your results, or is it just today I'm going to do this and then you're worried about tomorrow? Or are you actually looking back at what you did and coming up with new training plans going forward?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I think outside of the first 6 months when I wasn't really running too diligently, I think I have a record of every single run I've done.
Oh, wow.
Started taking those I don't even know if they even have them now, but they had that ring bind calendar, annual running calendar log that you'd buy one every year. The 2013 running, so I think I have 2012 and on. I started running in like fall of 10 was that first 5K, so it's easy date to remember. So I don't have from there up until like early 2011, but from then on I'd been logging stuff pretty
consistently.
Yeah.
And so then your second marathon you move into, and how does that one go?
Well, it was, I had a fever the night before. I'm sick. It's a blizzard. I run like 3:36. So I didn't improve
that's
at
still,
all.
Running in a blizzard, that's still pretty decent.
Yeah. And I got home. I had to go back to my parents' house and have my mom nurse me back to health literally for like 3 days. I was
load you up on chicken soup.
Exactly. Yeah. Sitting there, she's thinking, I'm pretty sure she'd be able to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure she was telling me like, maybe don't run anymore. This is not good for you. This is.
But you're looking at when can I sign up for the next one while she's nursing you back to health.
And now I have two. Now I have more beta. Right. I got one pretty good attempt where I fell apart at the end. One where I felt terrible the whole way, but never really got worse. And now I'm like, okay, so what do I do on my next one? So I did wait another. The second one was in like a February, and then I waited until October of that year.
So you actually had some recovery time.
Yeah, so 2012 in October, I did the Hartford Marathon in Connecticut.
Okay.
And then in that one, I ran 3:01.
Oh, wow.
So that was the one, my goal was 3 hours, but I knew at least 3:05 I'd break it. So I remember coming across the finish line, and somebody was finishing right next to me, and they were like, you almost broke 3 hours. And I was like, I don't care. I just needed to break 3:05. And they were like, what? And I was like, I just wanted to get into Boston. That was my only goal at the time. Yeah. So I knew I had a few minute cushion. I'd be okay to get in because it usually goes under that goal time. So, and then I basically signed up when I got home because it was the following one. But I think the way it ended up working out is I didn't sign up in time or I didn't qualify in time. So whatever ended up working out, my first Boston was 2014 instead of 2013, which ended up being fortuitous because 2013 was the year of the bombing. So I was on course that year at like halfway, out there supporting some friends who are running, because by this point I'm living down in Massachusetts, near pretty close to the course. So I ended up
you were
running.
on course supporting some other friends when the bombing happened.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was crazy. I mean, still today, it's just hard to even think about what happened. We were like having a party, right? Because it's the Boston Marathon. It's a state holiday, so everything's closed in Massachusetts. It's on a Monday. It's a very, it's a very unique thing. Patriot Day, it's called. So it's a big like celebration of. It's almost like a 4th of July kind of thing going on. There's, people in Minutemen militia outfits out there doing reenactments. Paul Revere's riding by on a horse, and so we were having a good old time at the halfway mark at Wellesley College, just yucking it up, and then. No one's calling, no one's texting, because all the cell phone coverage goes down. They completely, so the whole state, that whole eastern side of the state lost cell service because it got overloaded, the network. So we don't know what's going on. We hear something about a terrorist attack and we don't have cell phones, and you're like, whoa, like,
what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, but I didn't know any of that for like 3 hours because we were just at a barbecue. None of us had our phones on. We were just hanging out. The race had kind of ended, so we were just having a barbecue.
Waiting for everything to come back up.
Yeah. So I finally drove home, which was like 40 minutes west of the city. And when I got back to where I was living at the time, that's when I got back within cell range out there. And just a couple hundred texts from friends and family, because everyone knew I was going to be down there at the race. They knew I wasn't running, but they were like, oh, he's going to be down there celebrating, doing something. So they're all just thinking he's at the finish line. What, where else would you be? And
right.
So everyone was terrified and worried, and it was crazy. But the positive thing for me anyway ended up being that I got to run it the year after that.
Yeah. So how was that coming back the year after?
It was just incredible. I mean, it was incredible. It was like immediately it's this, if you ever seen a Patriot fan, they can be terrible, but they can also be great when they're coming back and proving that the whole Boston Strong thing was just, I mean, it was
pretty intense.
Yeah, it was not a joke. It was amazing to see. I think they said there was 1.5 million spectators on the course.
That's crazy.
And I mean, it's point to point. It starts out in rural suburbs, and there was people 3 rows deep.
How do you channel towns. That now into your race effort?
Oh, it was incredible. So they have these huge banners every new town. You run through 6 or 7 towns. Somebody from New England might hear this and kill me for not remembering that. But you run through each new town, and there's a big banner that says like "Welcome to Newton," "Welcome to Wellesley." Okay. I hit each one of those, and I'm throwing my hands in the air. Come on, is that all you got, Newton? I was riding this crazy wave of adrenaline, and I think, if I remember correctly, I think I ran 2:36. That first Boston year.
It's just flying.
So yeah, I just rode that wave of energy. I finished and squeezed a volunteer's lights out because I asked him who won, and they didn't know the name. They just said an American, and I'm thinking it's Ryan Hall because we saw him at the start line, and I was lucky enough I got to be in the corral, the first corral right behind the elites. So he came by and fist pumped all of us or gave us high fives, and it was just this like thrill, It's huge,
absolutely surreal.
Surreal. Meb comes running by,
That's
but
crazy.
Ryan was pumped, and he was like, he had said ahead of time to the press, we're going to win. The Americans after the bombing, like, this is important to us. So I thought he had won, and I'm just like a huge Ryan Hall fan. So I like squeeze his. She's like, stop! I just want to put a medal around your neck. What is going on, man? And then I found out Meb had won, which I'm sure everybody's heard the story. He had the names of the victims on his bib, and it's just so personal. And yeah, so that
extremely powerful.
Yeah, extremely powerful, and it felt like nothing in running will ever top this moment. And
that's a pretty amazing.
In some ways,
experience.
Nothing has, but in some other ways, like personally, I've had so many more amazing moments since then. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to save the question I'm going to ask about that then until we get a little bit farther in. But I do want to ask, by the time you got to this Boston effort, what are you doing different now in your training regimen? Because I did read something, or maybe it was one of the videos where you self-coach.
Yeah.
And I believe you also even coached, assistant coach or coached for a college as well.
Yeah.
So how do you transition from just getting going and reading a few training plans and reading Born to Run to putting together a training plan that takes you down to a 2:36 marathoner? Because that's some serious wheels right there at that point. So What are you doing for, like, say, training volume and to get yourself ready for something like that?
Yeah, I did a couple things that I shouldn't even take credit. A couple things I lucked into. So when I moved down to Massachusetts, I was like, I didn't know anyone. So I was first of all looking for some friends, but also looking for running friends because I had just been getting really into it right before I moved. So I moved down there. New England has this amazing club running scene. I mean, there's 10 to 20 pretty good sized clubs in different regions. So I synced up with a club that was nearby, most of the club at that time was a bunch of like masters, even veterans. So I'm running with a bunch of guys in their like 50s and 60s. Half of them had been 220 marathoners back in the 70s.
I was gonna say, probably still just fast as all get out.
So we're doing indoor track workouts that I had no idea what I was doing. So that was where it was pretty fortuitous that I hooked up with the right people to really give me the advice on how to actually train. Because I had been running those first couple of years. I probably tried to PR in the 5K every day on every run. It's like, so yeah, I had training plans. I thought I was smart building up my long runs maybe, but when it came to just daily runs, there was not a single easy run. It was just every day,
go hard.
Yeah, which I would tell anyone now is a great way to be mediocre and injured all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say that that's your kind of the big change in your training then, as you went from going all out every run to where you were able to be a little bit more thoughtful and, okay, what do I need to get out of this day?
Yeah.
What are you doing for volume at this point?
Probably 60, 70 miles a week.
Okay, I think. So putting in good miles.
Yeah, pretty legit volume at that point. But right after that, or maybe right around when I did that first Boston, I started getting quicker. I had started thinking about like, well, I want to run sub 230. I want to run even quicker. And I just pretty much started Googling like what people train for or what people do volume wise that are getting those times. And then I just tried to copy it. So I went from like 60, 70s to I think 130 miles a week at my peak during that time. And it didn't make me better. It just made me tired all the time.
Yeah.
Like, so I kind of hit that. I went from like 301, I ran a 248, and then I ran that like 236. And then I just kind of stayed there. I got down to maybe 233 in 2014, 2015. I think the next year I ran Boston again the next year in 233.
Wow.
And then I ran like 3 or 4 marathons around that same time. And that's when I finally went and got a coach, because I was like, okay, I've figured it out a little bit. I got, big chunks of time off every time. And at this time, I'm still just focused on marathons like that. I read Born to Run. It got me all excited about going long, but I like really trying to master things, and I just couldn't master it yet. So I was like, I can't move on yet. I haven't figured this out. I got to keep trying it again and again until I get it right. So
what was the biggest suggestion from your coach then at that point to move you forward?
She was like, stop running 130 miles a week. It was very, very honest advice. I'll never forget it, because she said, people that run 130 miles a week are running like a 220 or faster, and you're running 233.
And where did she think that the issue was with that? If you're putting in all this volume, how come you're not getting the quickness out of it?
Yeah, she was like, you're still running too hard most of the time. She's like, you're running too hard and too much. She's like, you need to dial back. She's like, if you look at people that run about the time in the marathon that you're running, they don't need 130. That's like, maybe you don't ever need it. Everybody's different with what volume they need. But I was just putting in that number because it was like, well, I see people that are really good and they run a lot, more is better, right? So she was like, let's dial it back and let's start doing workouts harder. And then that was right around the time when another friend of mine, a local friend, was like, because my coach was just online. She was based in Colorado, great coach. But a local friend of mine was like, hey, I need someone to help step in as a volunteer at this college. So I went and learned from him and put into practice, like working really hard, structuring workouts while doing it myself. Like I was running with it was a D3 small college just outside of Boston. And I was running with the guys' cross country team, doing all their workouts with them and probably adding on a little to make it a little longer because they were going pretty short. But that's when I kind of started really learning like how to actually push. We had an indoor track that we had access to in the winter, and just like, track hack and almost puking after workouts. When you start getting to that level in a workout, it's real easy to run real easy the next day.
Probably so. I can imagine you don't want to feel that every day.
No. And you're just forced to, when you're going to the point where you're seeing stars and almost puking, you're running 9 or slower the next day. It's just, you don't have a choice.
You have to recover.
Yeah. So that kind of really just going into all different sides of the sport instead of just being like, how much quicker can I get at this marathon? Can I cut another minute off? Can I cut another couple minutes?
And how can I add more volume?
Now can I add more volume? It went to like, how do I learn all these other facets to running? Because then as I started working with the college and, I was working with the whole team, but mostly in the cross country. But
now you're getting more intentional in your workouts.
And I'm like, wow, these guys are doing crazy stuff. Like, how do I learn these other parts of? So I kind of just started going full into track and field instead of just being a marathon, hobby weekend marathon runner. It was like this whole sport is vast and there's all these other things to learn.
There's so many things you can do with it. Yeah. I remember reading something about Nick Simmons when he was at his peak running track. I think he maxed at 60, 70 miles a week too. And, he was an Olympic medalist as well. So you're still back east and these things are happening. You're bringing your time down. Now you're starting to work with coaches. You're getting into coaching and you must be really, you're in it at this point. So what's your next goal at that point? And then what takes you from being where you're at to moving over to the West Coast?
Yeah, so I ended up being in Massachusetts for about 5 years. And then, kind of gradually did all those things and started getting into, running more and more in track and field and started. So I joined a new club team at that time, about a couple years after I got down there. And then just met some really great connections on that team who started kind of shifting me into other interests, into other things as far as running goes. So we had a solid, tight-knit group on that team where we would compete in team competitions too. So we got to do I don't even know about it anymore. It's pretty small, but everybody knows about the club cross-country club cross-country championships where, it's pretty competitive, clubs across the country, but there's also a club track championships. Okay. I don't think it's ever even been hosted out this way. It's like these big East Coast clubs, they all do it. So we did that as a team and just, I got into, started doing way more 10Ks and steeplechase even on the track. So I
different team. This isn't the Car Buddies team.
This isn't the car. No.
Things have shifted at this point.
Things have shifted. So I'm running on a group called Sisu Project.
Okay.
And then met just some lifelong friends there that really, at the time, I had no idea, but we're going to change the trajectory of life completely.
And you're still not running trails at this point? You're still focused on marathon?
Still running marathon. And a marathon and a lot more like tracks.
Okay.
10K. So the club scene in New England, you'll run all the club races. So it's like, there is a marathon, but there's a 10K, there's a 10 mile, there's, so it's well-rounded.
You're getting a little bit of everything.
Yeah, getting a little bit of everything. And
gotcha.
You're running a team scoring, so that makes it kind of exciting. And you learn to push a little harder too because there's something else on the line, right?
Yeah, it's not just you.
It's not just a PR. It's like, I got to help the team get the score. And
yeah.
So one of my close friends on the team is now my wife, Sumner.
Okay.
So at the time, we were friends for that whole 5 years I was on the team. It wasn't until late 2016, early 2017, we both happened to be single at the same time. It was like,
the stars aligned.
There's something else here. Meanwhile, our friend Matt, who was the kind of the captain who'd created this club that we were on, this running club, he and his wife were like, these two gotta end up together. Like, there's no doubt.
Everybody else saw it.
They never really said anything to us. They were like, we're not gonna, they're not the type of people to push it.
Just let nature take its course.
Yeah, exactly. So we got started dating, got married. All of that was in like a couple months. It was like
it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, whirlwind of just like, all right, this is good. We're supposed to be together.
That's awesome.
Let's make this happen. So I had just at the same time started getting into trails.
Okay.
So that was basically 2016.
And have you done an ultra at this point?
Nope. I'd actually start going the other way, right? I was doing way more 10Ks and stuff like that and shorter road races. But I went up to the Mountain Champs, which is like a sub-ultra. It's usually about either 10K to 8 miles distance. It's quite often in New Hampshire. So I went back up to New Hampshire and did that race. The coach I was still working with at the time, she had some training partners who were coming out. So we're talking like elite level athletes from Boulder are coming out.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, I know I have a slight connection to these people. So I just kind of fanboyed and was like, hey, I'm driving up from Boston if anyone needs a ride. So Addie Bracey was coming out to do her first trail race. And she was like, sure, I'll take you up on that.
Nice.
So I gave her a ride up, and then their little group they had at the time, they were like, we got extra space in the condo if you want to stay here. So I went up there and did that Mountain Champs in 2016. And the condo I stayed in ended up being Andy Wacker, Addie Bracey, Matt Daniels, and Hayden Hawks.
Holy smokes.
And most of them were running their first trail race ever.
Wow.
So they all went and made the team at that mountain. I mean, they all just went out and were like,
got it done.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at this point?
And I finished like 55th, like it was my first mountain or trail race ever. I grew up hiking it, so I knew the mountains, I knew the trails in New Hampshire, but yeah, I still barely knew you could run up a mountain, I'm like power hiking, right?
Was it love at first trail run?
Oh yeah. I mean, just being part of that right there, with these elite athletes and just seeing and just feeling like the excitement as they're making a U.S. team, because I had started to be more aware of that, and in kind of that level of the sport. but I hadn't really had any personal ambitions. It was still about like my own times, my own running.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that one 2016, and that's when I came back and was like, yeah, I need to go all in on trails now. This is
where I want to be.
Yeah, because I just felt like for me, even though that race didn't maybe show the potential, in my head I knew it was there right away. I was like, I can get better at this, and not just PRs. I can try and go somewhere with this. Like this is this is worth doing what I was doing with the cars. Like
seeing
this
an
is
opportunity here.
Yeah. We're talking businesses and at some point that are going to be aligned with this. Like I just felt that. So 2017, Sumner and I weren't married yet, but we were dating, and we might have already even been engaged. It was like right around that time, right? We got married in June. I think this was just before June. So we were just about to get married, and we went up to the 2017 Mountain Champs, which were in New Hampshire again.
Okay.
And then that was Sumner's first time doing it. I can't tell you what she placed, but I want to say like top 20. She's always been a better runner than me, so her first go at it was much better.
Oh wow, okay.
I mean, she in 2008 she ran like a 250 marathon at Boston. So yeah,
holy smokes.
She was almost going to trials back then. So
wow. She's got some speed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And she never even ran full time up until after college either. She's a field hockey player. So yeah, it was crazy. Well,
so are you running together at this point? Then
so
you're training together.
Yeah, we're running together all the time. Same coach from Colorado, and just getting to know each other better. About to get married, and going on a lot of runs. So and then we went up to New Hampshire, did that Mountain Champs, and then that year 2017, I ended up finishing 10th. And then in the trail US Champs, anybody who's top 10, it's really cool. They have the whole top 10 goes up and takes a picture. So you have the top 3, they get their own little award ceremony, but everyone
part
from
of
the top
10
is
is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I guess you really feel like, okay, this is
it legitimizes what you're doing now, and all the effort that you're putting into it, that kind of what you were saying, that you saw a future in this, and now it's like, okay, I'm making it happen.
Yeah. So right around that time, or right after that, we got married. And I went to my boss, and we were looking for a house and looking for anything. My wife's inherited 2 dogs, so she's got 2 dogs, and you got to pay extra for the apartment with the dog, and we're looking around. And I think at the time we looked within about 100 miles of Boston, and the cheapest house anywhere within 100 miles where we both worked was like $500,000, and it was like a fixer-upper. It was just crazy. So we were like, we can't afford to buy here. And everyone's telling us, you just got married. We're in our younger 30s now. Like, you got to buy a house. That's the next step. And we're like,
that's what you do.
Like, we can't do it. We can barely afford to, eat, pay for groceries. So we're like, what's going to happen? So I go to my boss, and we had some people in our sales team at my job who worked all over the country. But I was like, maybe I can do that. So I just.
And what are you doing at this point for work?
I'm working in industrial automation. So like, the suppliers of big manufacturing companies, so their electrical parts. If you ever seen like a factory line, and they have all these like robots moving the door to the car to all those things, the big automation equipment. So I'm working for a company that does that, and I go to my boss, and she's like, "Yeah, you want to work remote? Okay, well, when do you want to start doing that?" And I'm like, what?
It's that easy?
So yeah, we just gotten married, and I go back to tell Sumner that night I come home from work, and I'm like, yeah, so my boss said we can move anywhere in the country. And
wow.
She's got her master's in education and digital arts. So I'm like, you're a teacher. I mean, everybody needs
you can get a job
right?
anywhere, yeah.
So we basically just looked up and down the Rockies at that point, and we were like, let's pick a mountain town. What are we doing? And she's into trails. I mean, after we got married, we realized that my first love for sport, the only sport I ever did before I started running in my 20s was skiing, downhill skiing.
Okay.
And she was like a sponsored snowboarder before she was a runner. And
so
we're like, wait a second,
an athlete all around too.
She's got 20 sports. Yeah.
Crazy.
Don't even have time to go into all the stuff she does. So we're both like, wait, everything we love is in the mountains. So yeah, we just kind of put our finger up and down the map, like, okay, we know about Boulder. It's like the traffic of Boston. We don't want that. That's garbage. Honestly, no offense to Boulder people, but
beautiful place.
Beautiful place.
A ton of people, and it's
we missed the boat by a long shot on that one. And then we're looking at places like Bend, which we absolutely love, and we go often, but we can't afford to live in Bend. Like, I'm not working in tech. It's like,
right.
I got, I'm in manufacturing here. Let's be realistic. So we're looking at like Flagstaff and a couple other towns that we didn't know. Sumner had done some snowboard camps in Mammoth, so she kind of knew about Mammoth a little bit, and she'd been up to Vancouver, and she's dual citizenship with Canada, so she's like, hey, we can just go to Canada, and I'm like, I'm not ready to leave the U.S. yet.
Not just yet.
I want to get on one of these U.S. teams now. That's my next goal, right? So we basically didn't know about Boise, so we came out to visit. Everything else we kind of had an idea. But Boise was on the list because it was actually affordable back in 2017. And we were like, well, we'll go visit. So we did a crazy whirlwind long weekend out here. I think we were here for 3 days and saw 30 houses or something. It was just like
overwhelming,
blurry vision by the end. You don't even know what you're looking at, right?
It's got walls. It's got a roof. It looks like the last one.
Yeah. And the first one we looked at was this gorgeous house in Eagle and this, 1970s subdivision. So it's still affordable. And our realtor was telling us, he's like, that's the best location. He's like, I'm not trying to sway your opinion, but, we were looking at houses on the far side of Caldwell. We looked at like a house halfway to Idaho City at 4,000 feet. And we looked all over the place. And he's like, that's going to be the most convenient, best value place.
For what you're trying to do.
What you want to do. So we're like, okay, we don't know how to buy a house. We've never done this. So we put in an offer and hopped on our plane. We had a layover in O'Hare in Chicago, and we get off and turn our phones back on. And he's like, yeah, they accepted your offer. We're like, what? Like
the whirlwind continues.
Even then, the market was pretty crazy. So we thought there's no way they're going to accept our offer. We agreed to their asking price and told them to cover closing costs. And they were like, yeah.
Wow.
Like our
Yet
realtor
again,
goes,
things just seem to be aligning.
This guy was a noob.
Doesn't want to push back on it. Just take what,
Yeah. So we got home and we had 3 weeks to pack everything up. And
holy smokes.
We booked one of those, like, you pack, they ship it things. We're like, we're not driving a U-Haul out. That's a little tricky. We got the dogs. So we packed our stuff up in a truck and then spent 8 days kind of making our way across
meandering your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get here and you settle in, and what's one of the first things that you do? I mean, do you really immediately start getting into running up the trails and trying to connect with people?
We were out on the trails before we moved in. So we came out and they hadn't finished moving yet. We got here, we got here like a day after we were supposed to be able to move in, and they still weren't done. So our realtor's like, yeah, I'm sorry, they're in the house still. He's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, you can't go yet. We're like, are you kidding me? So we grabbed the dogs. We just driven I think the last day we'd driven from like Grand Junction up here. So, I mean, we were tired.
Ready to move your body.
Yeah. So we go to like either Eagle Bike Park or Polecat, and we do like a 6-mile run with the dogs, and we finish and check our phone, and the realtor's like, yeah, you can move in.
Now is the time.
Yeah. So we'd already been out.
That's too funny.
So yeah, I think the weekend after we moved here, we got lost running up Peggy's and ended up running like 24 miles. So it was like,
it's beautiful up that way, but
yeah.
Yeah. So you get here, and have you still not moved into ultra distance yet?
Yeah, still hadn't done any. I don't think I'd ever run. I might have run like 28 miles with some friends on like a long training run on the roads. But yeah, never like officially. Yeah.
And so what does that look like then? You get here and you immediately start on a training plan. What's your target right now?
The target was still like the mountain champs, so much shorter than ultra, but super steep mountain races. That was still the target at the time. I'm trying to remember what the next actual race was. I think it was back in New Hampshire again, so we had to fly back the next year, but that was really the goal. So we were just on our own with still the same coach, so we were getting coached, online coached for the first like 9 months that we were here, and then 3 weeks before Robie. We'd signed up for Robie because I think even our realtor was like,
you got to do when you're in Boise. Yeah, you got to run Robie.
Then you got to get registered the morning of. We're used to that with like big races anyway. You're like, you got to be on the computer. So we both signed up for Robie that first year. So that would have been spring of 2018. I think was the first Robie that we were here for.
Okay. So
we signed up for that, and then I think as it started getting closer, I'd been doing all my workouts by myself or just with my wife. And as Robie started getting closer, I was like, I wonder if there's got to be some like faster runners in town that are doing this too. It's not just for fun. I mean, you can have fun running fast too. So yeah, I'm like, there's got to be some guys. So I found the Boise Billies.
Okay.
And then I went and did a workout with him. It was 3 weeks before Robie. It might have been 2 weeks before. It was pretty close on the race. And we did like hard threshold effort up 8th Street, and then I think we did like 2 miles up and 1 mile down. So yeah, I want to say this was like right before the race. It might have been the week, like 3 days before Robie. It was like very close So it was, it was only like 3 miles. And on the downhill mile, a couple of the guys and I just didn't, we were supposed to go 1. We went like 1.5. We just kept going. We were running like 4:30 pace coming down,
Holy
down 8th Street. And I'm just like, I found the fast guys.
Just loving it.
This is it. I have people to run with,
That's awesome.
So I was like thrilled, probably almost ruined my race. But, and then I ended up finishing second that first Robie. So
holy smokes, you were flying then.
This is the race in town. My dentist, I go to a teeth cleaning. It was like right afterwards. And he's like, I remember you saying you were going to run that Robie Creek race. How'd it go? I was like, I was second. He's like, that's like the thing here. And that's good.
Yeah, that's impressive. Very impressive.
He's like, people in like the grocery store know about that thing. Like that's a big deal. And I still don't think I knew what big deal Robie was to the area because we'd only been here like 6 months, but.
That's crazy. And so now you're running with the Billies. How does that impact your training? Because you're self-coaching and you're working with your online coach as well.
Yeah.
So you start running with the Billies. Does that impact the specificity of your training, or are you still just kind of doing your own thing and running with them periodically?
Yeah, no, I started running with them pretty much full time as far as workouts go. Easy runs and still at home, and then workouts once or twice a week with the guys. Matt Lay was coaching the Billies at the time, so it was just kind of a annual membership, and then he'd provide like a structure for the week, but it was kind of up to you. But then he'd provide like the full workout for the the Wednesday with the group. And if
Matt Lay's a great guy,
yeah, he's just phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
The science that he has in his brain and the coaching experience, and this guy was former U.S. champion, right? So it's like, okay, so we met him and we were like. I don't know if we had a one-on-one coaching relationship with him when we went back to do mountain champs the following year, my wife and I, but that was kind of like right around the same time we started working with him. So going into 2019, we started getting coached full-time by Matt. Okay. We were like, that's when we first decided to run ultras.
He's local and that guy's legit.
Yeah. I think it was partly Matt that made us wanting to run ultras because I was fully into trails, but not at the ultra level, just the mountain champs and stuff like that.
Okay.
So we went back to New Hampshire to do mountain champs the next year. Ended up coinciding with a best friend's wedding back there, which coincided a little too close because it was the day before.
Oh, geez. How did that impact your race?
The race went terrible. Like we were up till midnight and then we had to drive. We left at like 3:45 in the morning to get up to the race day of, and just hadn't tried something like that before, and yeah, that's a no-go. If it's an important race, you can't do that.
Yeah, not the day before.
It was worth it. I mean, the wedding was more important to be there, as we were both in the wedding, so it was just like, so the race didn't go well. We came back, and even though we knew why it didn't go well, it still kind of made me feel a little defeated on like these mountain champs. It's just so fast and competitive, and having come to the sport late and gone right to marathons, it was like, I don't know if I really can run with these guys at like 8 miles with 3,000 feet of vert, like that first year when I finished 10th, or the second year I did it when I finished 10th, it was an up down year and I'm pretty good at downhill. So I could, we went back and did it that second time or third time now, it was uphill only year. And it's just
really?
You got to be an aerobic animal, and, and I'm sure I've gotten better since then, but still to this day, I'm like, I don't know if I can really go aerobically as hard as some of these people who've run like 28 minutes in the 10K.
That's crazy. And it's hard to gain a lot of time on the uphill. I'm like you too. I like to stretch out the long legs on the downhill. And that's it's like being a kid again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like the skiing, my winter love, it's like the adrenaline on the downhill. And so that was tough. We came back and we were like, let's go longer. We both liked marathons on the roads. My wife Sumner's really good on endurance, and like I was just kind of getting more into it. And I'm like, that's what we got to do next. So that's when we started working full time with Matt, because we're like, well, we already know this guy who's been 100-mile champion on the trails. Like, this is the guy to work with.
That's the guy to learn from.
So we basically told him, like, we want to run our first 50-mile. Like, again, trying to be a little strategic. We're like, we're not going to go to 100K or 100-mile. Let's start with a 50. I think we did a 50-mile with a 50K, in the training plan built in to kind of.
And what was that? What was your first 50-miler?
The first 50 was Run the Rock over in Bend.
Oh, okay.
So was that Alpine running, I think. So great event. We did a 50K also over in Bend on the way to the Flagline 50K.
Okay.
And I think we both finished fourth. I think I was fourth and Sumner was third. So like it went pretty well, the first 50K. Looking back now, it's funny because I remember running some 10-minute miles near the end and thinking like, this is the end of me as a runner. Like
nobody can see this. This is it. If I can't go faster than 10 minutes.
I ran like a 10:40. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna lay down on the trail. I can't go any quicker.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't remember what I want to say 4:06 or something was the total time. So like it's still pretty good 50K, but it felt like it was like eternity,
So you get done with that and you're feeling like it's just absolute death.
Yeah, and a month later, we got the first 50. I think it was about a month later.
Oh, geez.
So Matt prepped us so well, though. I think our peak weekend, he had us do a back-to-back 30-20 run. So we did like 30 on Saturday, 20 on Saturday, or 30 Saturday, 20 Sunday. And
get you used to running on tired
and
legs.
all the training went well. He had us dialed in. So we went to run the rock, and I think I was third. I might have been fourth again. I think I was third at that one. But it went better. I still kind of bonked. Still has some like nutrition problems, but I ran like 740, mid to high 740, 748 maybe.
Okay, and you're at this point you've shifted to trails and you're not doing any marathon focused.
No.
Okay.
No. I'm like never again. I'll never do roads again at this point.
Really?
That's how I felt.
Wow, okay.
It wasn't reality, but that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I was just so excited about it. And then at that first 50, Sumner won, I think, by over an hour and set the course record.
Moly.
Which still stands today. So just seeing how well she was doing made me even more excited because I was
Motivate
like,
you.
It's something we knew together. I mean, she was like 20 minutes behind me. Like it was like
she's just eating up your heels.
Yeah, she was like fourth or fifth overall. Like so I'm like, okay, we can do this together because that was part of what made it. So we moved out here together. We're running trails together. Yeah. So that was 2019, and then 2020. Now I'm like, all right, next level up. All these other huge goals, and then no more running. It's like COVID hits, all races are canceled.
So what do you do at that point then? Is that just because I'm going to kind of shift this a little bit, and I guess I'm going to lead you with this question because where I first started to see your name pop up is on Strava.
Yeah.
And I just started seeing you climbing up to the top of all these FKTs and taking all these segments. And I was like, who the hell is this guy who's just fast as all get out, taking all these?
Yeah.
So at what point, I mean, are you shifting there to where you're going to run locally and see what you can take, or?
Yeah. So 2020, I think there was two, maybe there's more than two, but in my mind, there was two ways of handling the pandemic. There was in running, I'm sure. I'm not only talking about running. There was the despair of all my races are canceled. Why am I doing this anymore? Mm-hmm. Or there was the other side, which thankfully was how I responded to it, which was, oh, I don't have any races to worry about. I can train like an idiot. And back when I started, as we covered, training like an idiot was what got me into trouble, or, at least stagnant, right?
But you're not thinking about it at that point. It's just, I'm going to go out and get it done.
But now I have, I got a good, at least 5-6 years of really good training up to that point where I've been averaging, a few thousand miles a year.
So you got a good
now
base
I have
build.
a good base.
Yeah.
I know how to do strength training. I know some of the stuff we just gone through. Mm-hmm. I don't think we were getting coached by Matt anymore, but we had just come through that period because with races canceled, we were like, let's just stop getting coached and just kind of do our own thing. I feel like I kind of know a little bit more about the ultra stuff now, and I know how to do track workouts. And so we're like, let's just kind of take off on our own. Coaching was getting too expensive from everybody anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a factor. The financial side, where with two people getting coached, we're like, all right, let's just do it on our own and see what we can do. So yeah, COVID hit, and it was like, all right, I can try and run 100 miles a week, and I'd done that once or twice before, but always before an injury, or blew up my training cycle. So when 2020 happened, I just started, or spring of 2020, I just started running huge weeks.
So are you not even really focusing on training at that point? It's just going out and free running?
No, I was focused on training. I just didn't have a race. So it was like my training structure was like
as much as you can
100
take.
miles a week with a speed workout on Wednesday and a long workout Saturday.
Okay.
And doubles every other day. And
wow.
As far as the horizon, it's like, as far as I can see, I was like, until races get back on the calendar,
that's what you're doing.
This is what we're going to do. We did a couple of virtual race series, just threw them in as my workouts to, give some structure to the workouts. But yeah, it was just basically like, let's just go hard every day and see how long I can keep this up. So I went and my good buddy Sean Olson, which I know Sean.
Oh yeah. He Sean shot me a message last night.
Yeah. So Sean's like, dude, I want to run a Greenbelt marathon. Let's just find a loop. So we did a 5-mile loop in town. And I was like, I'll pace you. So we did a couple workouts. This is 3 weeks before we decided to do it in spring of 2020 because there's no races. We're like, let's have some kind of race. So we pick a date like 3 weeks out. So we'd both been training a lot of miles, and I'd been putting in these huge weeks. And I'm like, I know I can just go run a road marathon and see what happens. So I was gonna pace him, and then I started feeling pretty fast, and I was like, sorry, dude, I'm just gonna do my own.
Gotta see what happens.
Yeah, so we got a little table set up as an aid station. We can pass every few miles, and I'm like, I want to see what I can do. So yeah, I went and ran like 2:34. Just it felt casual, and I'm like, oh, okay, I could still run some fitness road here. Yeah, I could still do some roads again. So yeah, that was kind of like the trigger to be like, all right, I don't have to do just trails. I still got a little speed. And then that was kind of what started me on this path of like, I'd already tried to do the mountain champs in the past. And now I was trying to look at, maybe I could do a road ultra, like, because that sounds kind of crazy too. And really the goal kind of at that point was where I started getting this seed in my head of like, I have to make a US team. That's like my goal. Like, some people want to get sponsored. I'm like, I had started getting a different kind of career path at that point that I really loved, and I was like, I don't want to stop doing that. Like, I see the way pro runners struggle, and I feel terrible for that industry, and I want to do stuff to help them.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be a struggling pro runner. You know?
Yeah. Like, and you're starting to hit this as you're rolling through 2020, and you're putting in all this volume.
Yeah.
It starts to trigger in your head. Okay, this is where I think this focus is going to be for me.
This is my running goal. Okay. Like, I want to wear the stars and stripes. Like,
wow.
I don't think I can get to the level at this point. This is what I'm telling myself. I'm like, I don't think I could even get to the level where I could be a sponsored runner. But like, I think there's enough teams out there I can make one of them,
Wow,
so
okay.
Start getting that idea. Like, I don't even care what it is. So I start going back and forth. Like, and that's when I really started to identify what am I best at, right? Because now I've tried a bunch of stuff, and the 50 mile didn't go great. It wasn't terrible, but I felt like I really struggled with nutrition on the longer efforts. And I'm like, okay, so I started to solidify. Like, I can go out and run like a mid 230s marathon. What feels like most weekends if I'm not tired. So I'm like, there's got to be some way that translates to one of these kind of teams that I'm trying to make. So I started finding like the road 50K team. I'm like, that's got to be my goal. So spring of 2021, I was like my first time trying to see like what I can do. So like around the beginning of 2021, I said, I'm going to go run Weiser River 50K.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to go break 3 hours. And I'm telling people that. And in my own head, I'm like, telling myself, because I'm like, that seems crazy. I'd run like a 3:55 50K. I did one on New Year's Day just by myself in the bike park or with some friends, but not a race, and I ran like 3:55, and I'm like, I'm gonna run an hour quicker. This is crazy. But I'm like telling myself, like, you got to break 3 if you want to make one of these 50K
set an audacious goal and then go out and
yeah. So I went from 2020, the year of huge miles, and enrolled into 2021, started running 100-mile weeks in training, and my body's just holding up.
Wow.
And I'm working remote. I work from home still to this day. So I'm able to get in a lunch run and after work run and get some strength training because I don't have to commute. And I'm like, this is set up pretty much in my favor to make this happen. So that started being the goal. Just like make a US team. What's going to be I'm going to say easiest because they're all really hard. But
sure.
what's my best shot? It's probably a 50K because I really feel like I have that kind of dialed in. So I went to Weiser. I didn't break 3, but I ran like 3:03 high.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, this is huge. Like,
oh yeah, that's a fast run.
This is what I want to do. And I finished just like tired, but thinking like, okay, I can do that again. Like,
I'm trying to think what I have a friend Cameron Ulmer, and I think he had the course record for quite a long time.
Oh yeah, I had firmly in my sights what I was
that's
doing.
What you're chasing. So I ran that year with him, and I mean, he smoked all of us. I got second that year, and I think I was 3:45, and I got there, and I think Cameron had taken a nap at that point, and, made himself a meal and had his feet up. But yeah, you're hustling, man. That's a fast run.
I think it was like 3:10, 3:11 was his time, and no one had run really close to that since then.
Oh no!
But I'm like, this is a perfect course on a downhill.
You could fly if you got the legs. It's
almost better than pavement if you got. And that was, I had just bought a pair of the Saucony Endorphin Pros, so those are my first super shoes. I wouldn't even call them super shoes nowadays compared to what we have on our feet now. But yeah, I had just put those on and was like, I can spring up to the moon, So yeah, that was what happened. 2021. Went after that time at Weiser, got that, and then I was like, okay, I can make one of these teams.
So how does that work then? So if you're looking to make one of these teams, you're looking and you're finding these different ones, do you send somebody an email and have to kind of like you're trying to apply for a job and say, here's my,
Yeah, you send the resume.
Here's what I've done.
The 50K has a championship. So there's some of them are just based on resume.
Okay.
Nowadays, it's getting a little more organized, and I'd say pretty much all of them. You have a championship qualifying race, where you go just kind of like with our track trials. Like it's like a big deal, but it's not as big a deal in trail. But it's getting closer every year. So I think back in 2021, the 50K was back in New York on the East Coast, and I was like, I'm not going to go do that. Like, I really wanted to go try and make the team, but it's like March, literally.
I was going to ask what time of year.
And I'm thinking, I want to go run through sleet literally on the coast.
No, thank you.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
I'd rather run in the snow and here than try and do that.
Yeah.
So I didn't go after it, but that was kind of like, this is probably what I'll do next year in like 2022. And then I don't know what changed my mind, but going into 2022, I was like, you know what? I think I'll have a better shot if I go even further, because people have to be really stupid to do 100K on pavement. So I was like, I'll try and get the 100K team. Having never run over 50 miles, even on trails.
Wow.
So I went to the 100K championships, which is a championship race, and the weather just went crazy terrible. It was like freezing cold leading up to it. The day of the race, it ended up getting warm and humid and windy. It's in Wisconsin on a 10K loop.
And this is your first 100K on top of that? Oh, jeez.
I go out, we run like, I don't remember what time we actually ran through the marathon. We were running about 6:15 pace through the first marathon.
Holy smokes.
And we were just cruising. I was me and one other guy, and he was the 100K or 50K defending champion. So like he'd been done more of these road ultras. And I'm running with him, and we were like talking. I mean, we felt good. We didn't feel like we were going too hard, but then the wind and the humidity started to hit. And
starts to sap your energy.
Yeah, coming from here. I mean, I grew up in the East Coast humidity, but I'd been away for long enough that my body didn't know what it was doing.
Yeah.
So I finished about 40 miles, and I was in the lead at that point by like a couple of minutes.
Oh,
and
really?
I came through the start finish line on that loop, and I had a buddy who lives in Madison, Wisconsin, who I was staying with, and I walked over to him like off the course, and he's like, "Did you need water? Do you need?" He's like trying to help me, and I'm like, "No, I'm done.
I need to sit down."
He's like, "Dude, you look okay," and like people from the race are like, "Keep going." I'm like, no, I know in my head, like, I've had tunnel vision for the last 3 miles. Like, there's no point in me going out there and having someone give me a ride back. Like, that's just not safe for other people. Like, I mean, it's in a town. It's not like it's in the trails, but I'm like, I know I'm about to pass out. Like, I have heat stroke. Like,
oh, man. Well, at least you were that aware. And it's still your patience through the entirety of even moving into the running and what you've done to be thoughtful in your approach to it and not just going out and going crazy. It's pretty impressive. Not a lot of people have that maturity and sense of, self to be able to say, okay, I could just pummel myself into the ground, or I could accept the fact I'm not at a good place and I know it, and I want to live to run another day.
Yeah. Well, to me, the goals are what drive me.
Yeah.
And it's like, it bugs me when people drop out just because they're not going to hit the goal in the right, in the wrong context. Like, if you are wearing your country's, jersey, you don't drop out. Like, that's different, to me. But when it's something like that where you're trying to qualify, you're like, well, I'm just going to get hurt or worse, like, what's the point, So I think with the goal-driven mindset, that's what's kind of, So it's not that I'm even trying to think of being smart. It's just kind of thinking like,
how is this going to serve the longer-term goal? Yeah.
And I do have process goals. I know everybody loves to have process goals, don't have outcome-based goals. But when you're in a championship race, it's an outcome-based goal.
Yeah,
it just is, like, and sometimes if it's your first time, there is a process. I made it 40 miles. I did some great training leading up to it. I did a, run from Eagle out to Lucky Peak and back on the Greenbelt.
I was going to ask you about that. I saw that was a Greenbelt FKT from what I understand.
I just did that the other day again. Yeah. But I did it the first time back in 2021 or 2022. So yeah, I knew what I was in for. But yeah, I went out Christmas Eve and did it this year.
Knocked it out again, huh?
The official FKT on the Boise Greenbelt. So
that's funny. So this last race, then it didn't go like you planned. That was 2022.
Yeah, so I dropped out, but afterwards it was such a learning experience. Like as far as process goals go, that I did feel pretty happy afterwards because I went in like, this is kind of crazy to try and make this team having never run that far. It's kind of a shame for folks who know what they're doing if I end up somehow beating them, So
or it's just a testament to your ability to focus and, like you say, go after that goal.
Yeah. So then I came back and was like, all right, let's pivot to new goals, and that's when I kind of went back to what I already knew from 2021, was just like the marathon to 50K distance is like, I just love that.
That's
distance.
Your sweet spot.
Like, it's not even the distance, it's the time, is what I realized. It's like 3 to 4 hours of pushing really hard. It just hits home. That's what I love. That's the sweet spot. Yeah. So going into like 2020, late 2022, 2023, I still had every intent of doing it on the roads because I just felt like
that's just where you like to be.
Yeah, I can keep the pace better. I was doing almost all my easy runs on the trails, every other run. But my long workouts, I would just do on the Greenbelt. And I'm like, I just feel like that's my best shot at this. Because I think there's a certain mindset on the roads where it is kind of monotonous. It's kind of boring. It's not the scenery. And I feel like I can zone out pretty well. So I'm like, if I can zone out and lock in at like 6:15s, I feel like there's a smaller group of people doing that than there are going after the world champs trail team.
Yes.
So I'm like, this is my jam.
It's finding your niche. You found your sweet spot.
Yeah.
And you, like, obviously it sounds like you found some really good success at it as you were moving yourself forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. So I went into 2023, and that was my whole goal last year, was like, I'm getting on the 50K team. Now it felt like a realistic goal. Like, I feel like I have a really good shot.
Could.
Like, I knew I can do this.
Yeah.
I knew where the rate, like, I already looked at the world champs course. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm not even on the team, but I'm planning. Like,
is that surreal to you to say that out loud? I'm looking at the world's champ course.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. Every time I think about something like a goal like that, I think back to when I started running, you know?
Right?
In this whole conversation, it's like that our whole conversation replays in my mind. Like, dude, you were just tinkering on your car a decade ago. What? You didn't even care about sports. Like, what?
But it just goes to show that, with intentionality, and anybody can change at any time as long as they're willing to put in the work. Yeah. And it seems like that's exactly what has led to your success. Is you went into it and you've consistently put in the work and learned to continue to build and grow and develop your skills and your knowledge to where it didn't just happen overnight.
No, consistency is running. That's it. That's like, if you had to have one word on it's consistency. And then if you had to have like three, it's consistency, slow, slow mostly, and then fast. So it's like consistent, slow, and then fast.
Which I still think, even myself, so many people struggle with that as you go out, and it has to be a time trial every single time you step out the door.
And that's why I know I did it. I did it, and I didn't get better every time I've done that. And even now, it's like the temptation, that cycle.
It's there.
For some people, it's not. I count those people really lucky who can just enjoy going out. I'm that maybe the minority, and in my experience, the minority who wishes I could just work out every day. Like, I feel fun. I feel like I'm having fun, and I feel happy when I'm just hurting. So
I'm the same way. And I was actually going to ask you, kind of in tying into that, how do you keep your running fun and interesting?
Yeah, so I try to go really hard on the hard days, and I daydream about those days, and I squeeze in a lot of easy miles in between that. Most of the time I gotta go link up with Sean, because he lives a couple miles away, to keep me occupied, because I'm just so bored
going too crazy.
Yeah. He's like, I'm just doing loops in my neighborhood with the boys in the stroller, and I'm like, sounds perfect. I'll be over in 20 minutes. Like,
it's good to have a partner like that to run with.
Yeah, and we have a lot of them with the Billies, and then I'll run with Sumner and my wife and the dogs too. And
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's just that's how I do it. Is I'm that person that does not have much fun on those easy runs, and it's
you're waiting for that
to
time to really go out and get it.
Yeah. I just wait for the times when I can go hammer. So then 2023, to keep with like the timeline, I guess that was kind of the name of the game, was like, let's structure my year around things when I can go really put myself in the hurt locker, because that's a lot more fun. And then if I have those, I can think about doing those when I'm on the easy runs. If I'm out by myself on an easy run,
there you go.
I'll just basically spend the whole run daydreaming about
the upcoming hard run.
That's
funny.
Whether it's a workout or a race or. Yeah.
So you're coming into 2023 and you're dialing in your workouts. And so how does 2023 go?
Yeah, so it started out not how I thought or how I wanted. I went down in 2023, the 50K team. There was like, I think half the spots were going to be, or the first two spots would be from the US champs, which is back on the East Coast again in March. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I hate flying that direction anyway. And then I'm just like, the weather was going to be terrible. But there was a couple spots from that they would take off of a resume. And I'm like, okay, I've had. In 2021, that Weiser time was I think the 8th fastest 50K in North America for that year, and the fastest on trails.
So it's got you on a radar.
Fastest trail time in the year from North America, like, that's got to help my resume.
Yeah,
and that was still less than 12 months before. So I'm like, okay, I got a strong resume. I just need the qualifying. You have to have a sub 3 50K. So I'm like, all right. So I went and did this Jed Smith 50K down to Sacramento, which is just a 5K loop. It's like a brutal 5K loop. You do it 10 times on the American River or Sacramento River, whatever it is down there. And I went and honestly overconfident looking back, because I'm like, I've run 303 on gravel. I can go run sub 3. This is gonna happen. I still hadn't run a 2:30 marathon at the point. at that point, which was basically you have to run a sub 2:30 marathon en route to get a sub 3 hour 50K. And I'm thinking in my head, I can do this. Like, it just
Haven't quite put those together yet.
yeah. I've never done it before, but I know I can do it, and yeah.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss. A lot of times, you just go into something with an idea, and if you don't know any better, you're going to push yourself till you get there.
Yeah, and that's worked a lot, especially in the early days of my running, So I went down in 2023 to do that. I ended up running 3:06.
Holy smokes.
Wore those Nike Alpha Flies, and
Okay.
it took me like 9 months to have my right hamstring fully recover. They just don't
Really?
work for me. Like, I just couldn't. They did something halfway through, and I think it could have been the race too. It was supposed to, in my course research, it was like a 5K paved loop. In reality, it was like on a bike path on one side. On the other side, it was on river level. So every 5K loop, you'd have 2 sets of like stair steepness little hills for like a quarter mile or a tenth of a mile.
Oh, geez.
So you're like,
Wasn't
wearing
what you were
those
expecting.
shoes. Yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting. And combined with not having the right footwear, because on the other side, we were at river level on like probably 2 miles total of each, not 2 miles of each loop, half of each loop. So like 1.5 miles on each 5K loop had like gravel and dirt and some snow, and I'm wearing Alpha Flies. I'm like,
From what I understand with those shoes, you have to be going straight and it's got to be flat.
Yeah, if you can have a stride like Kipchoge, they work great.
Yeah.
If you run like me, they don't work, So flailing through the snow. So it went terrible, and that was really my last shot. I'm like, okay, there was some track 50K I could do back on the East Coast, but that was like, I put all my eggs into having the resume.
Mm-hmm.
So it just didn't work out. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to make that team, but I'm not going to waste all year. There's other teams out there. And then my good friend Jackson Brill, of course, being an absolutely amazing trail runner, he's been like, he and everyone else I know around here are now all trail runners, and they're all like, dude, get back on the trails anyway. Like, road running is stupid. Like, why would you want to go run a 50K running loops on pavement? And I'm like, yeah, guys,
I kind of want to go run a 50K loop on pavement.
they won me over. They like won me back over it. I'm like, it'd been at that point over 2 years since I'd really tried to run trails since that 50K or 50 mile in 2019. So I was like, all right, enough time's passed. I forgot how hard running super far is. Maybe I'll try it again. So then in 2023, with like a 2-month buildup, I did the trail marathon champs also on the East Coast.
How'd that go?
The race went pretty terrible, but my training really, really was like a huge step up. So I think we'll call it a net win.
Yeah.
But it made the race went so terrible that I came home and said, I'm not going to compete anymore for running. Like,
okay.
I said, I'm retired from competing, even though, when you don't do it full time, it's not really retired.
Relative. Yeah.
But like, I was like, I have no desire to stop training and doing what I did in 2020 was just awesome. Like, I had so much fun running really hard, getting a lot out of myself. And that was fulfilling enough. And I came home with another terrible race. Like, the Sacramento race wasn't terrible. It just, stuff outside of my control happened, and it didn't go well result wise. But the New York Marathon, I had put in some like the biggest vert months I'd ever done. I just felt like an animal. It was like, okay, I should be on trails this whole time. Like, I'm going to go make this team. And I felt really confident again, even though only the top 2 make the team. And there's like all these, really, really solid competition there. So yeah, I finished like 13th. So results wise, it wasn't terrible, but I just ran out of water like 4 times. I was struggling. It was like almost 5 hours. And I'm thinking in my head, like, it's going to be 3.5 hours. And yeah, so yeah, that went pretty bad. I called Sumner afterwards, called my wife afterwards, and I'm just like, I'm gone for 4 days. I have to fly to the East Coast. And I'm like, I love running every day and training hard.
Yeah.
I don't need this to make it fun.
Yeah.
And I felt genuine. I was telling everybody, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done trying to, like, I've tried for like 2 years to make one of these teams ever since stuff picked up after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm not done because I'm mad or bitter because I had a bad race. Like, I had a bad race, but like,
your perspective's starting to shift a little bit.
Where I'm going like, this is heartbreak, right? When you train hard for a race and it goes terrible, it doesn't matter what your goal was. Anytime we miss one of those goals after months of work put in, it's like, why am I going through this emotional roller coaster when I have a lot of fun if I just push hard every week.
Yeah, and if I don't tie the outcome tie it to the outcome of that race. That's interesting. So I did a similar thing. I've never been as fast as that. My best marathon was just over 3 hours. I mean, I don't have the speed that you did, but the same thing, competitive for over a decade, and it got to a point where I started looking at the competitive landscape, and it was kind of as you're saying, you're spending so much effort in running 100-mile, 90, 100-mile weeks with all the vert, and you're doing all these things, and then you're going and you're getting ready to go and participate in these races to where it's, I don't want to say that you lose the enjoyment of running, but it's like, I just really like to go and do the thing for fun. Even if it's in some sort of a training capacity, you're still, changing up your workouts and all that. The same thing. I don't want to taper. I don't want to take my time off and you just want to go out and do that. That's interesting. You're hitting that too.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't run this big training week if I just did a hard race that killed me.
Yeah.
I don't want to recover. I want to just run hard every week.
And keep going.
Yeah. And not do what I was doing before, or I was being dumb running hard every day.
Yeah.
But by hard every week, I mean like a structured training week.
Structured.
Yeah.
So what does that look like now? So you're stepping back from the competitive landscape, and I mean, you're still...
Yeah, so I come home from that New York race, the Breakneck Trail Marathon. I come home and, I'm going through this realization of like, I don't need competition to fulfill me, having that perspective shift. And I did take some downtime because that race was brutal, and, just New York City afterwards, walking around for hours and time on feet. So I come home and take like a full down week, which I never do. And I just mentally, emotionally, physically just needed a break. Mm-hmm. I start like for once slowly easing back into just doing some easy runs. And I'm running with Sean Olson, and he's like, "Hey man, I saw them posting like this North and Central American Trail Championships team. It's the whole team is built on resume. There's no qualifying races because it's like, it's the first time they're doing a full trail. It's usually the NACAC Mountain Championships, but now they finally added like a long distance trail race, so it's like it's a whole new branded thing. It's like a new continental championship. So he's like, yeah, they're asking for resumes. Like I saw some Instagram post about it, and he tells me that he's like, you should at least apply. And I'm like, no man, like I'm done. I just said I'm done from doing these. Like I don't need another heartbreak.
But you're thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I did dismiss. I will say for the first few, I dismissed it. I was like, cool, thanks, Sean. Sean is like the ultimate cheerleader for all
absolutely.
He's
Love
great
that
at
guy.
it, right? And he's like, dude, you got to. And I'm like, no. So it took like a week, and then he finally wore me down. And I was like, yeah, I guess there isn't any heartbreak. I send in my resume, and if I never hear back, I never hear back.
Right.
Like I've gotten to know a lot of the folks on like the USATF trail and mountain committees and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, like
see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens. So I sent it in, did have that initial like, hey, this could work. That could be fun. And then after like a week, I was like, I'll probably won't even hear back. And I genuinely just forgot about it. I was like, that was cool. I sent my resume. It was fun going through the resume process and like really listing my races. It's fun to do that and like
go back and look at just what all you've done.
Like some of those had gone pretty bad lately, but had good learning experiences. I still had that great, the Weiser went well. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like my net trend is still up. This is cool. We'll see what happens. And it did make me think maybe I will race again, but I'm not traveling. Like I'm still like, I'm
more selective and
for fun. And Sumner was getting back into trails. She'd been doing just indoor soccer, and she's like, hey, maybe next year we can do some more like travel to go some of these really cool scenic races. And I'm like, yeah, let's just run them together. Like I'll train hard, but then we can just run our own race, and we can both just have fun. And okay, that's cool. Good. We got a plan. It's all figured out. And then like, 3 weeks, a month later, they're like, yeah, you were our first pick for the trail team. Like, you want to go do this? You want to go wear the
right back into
USA jersey that you've been trying to wear for like 5 years at this point? And I'm like, okay,
yes, I do.
So yeah, quick tidbit that relates to that. I think right after I found out I made the team, I did a workout that weekend with our other good friend Josh McAdams, who is a 08 Olympian. Casually steeplechase Olympian, right, and former multiple U.S. champion. He runs with the Billies pretty frequently, and I'm on a run with him. And he's like, dude, now that you made this team, he's like, I know it wasn't the team you wanted. It's, it's the NACAC team. It's not the world team. But he's like, you're going to be all in on making that world team again. And I'm like, no, Josh, no. He's like, you go do this race, coming from an Olympian. He knows what he's talking about. Yeah. He's like, you're going to get the bug back. So sure enough, I went and did the NACAC race in September 23. Did pretty well. I was fourth. And our other runner was second, and our other two runners were second and fifth. So we got the team.
Wow.
Got the team gold. he's like, okay, not only did I get to wear the USA, like, well, yeah, it wasn't a world champs race. It's just, it's just NACAC, which is like
semantics.
Three other countries.
You're wearing the colors for the states, and you've got a gold medal. That's top of the world right there.
So it's like, okay, yeah. And the race went for beyond that too. It wasn't like I just helped. Like I was in second or third for almost the entire race too.
Holy
like
smokes.
And I felt really, really strong.
So
and this course was brutal. It's just shy of 50K distance, and it had like 8,000 feet of vert. And the biggest hill was like 400 feet of gain. So it was just up and down this river canyon, just like hot. It was like 80 by the time we finished. Not humid, but just like, like kind of our climate, but just really hot that day. And we're just like, I just felt super strong all day. So
nice.
Like, okay, now I've run
so good.
Now I've run that like 50. It was the exact opposite of what happened in New York at the beginning of the year. On a course with almost the same amount, a little less vert because it was the same amount over 50K and not over a marathon, but it was like the same time that it took me to run the marathon.
Everything just came together.
Everything clicked, yeah, and the belief was kind of back because I think that really shot my belief in that marathon. And
got your confidence back.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
So now 2025 is the next Worlds, and there was no stopping the train. It's
gonna keep
and there's no more of these road ultras. After it was so funny, the training for that race, like I said, the race ended up going terrible. Came back like I don't even want to compete anymore, but I did only want to run trails after that. Like I went to that New York race, even though the race went bad, the training for it, like I just started getting obsessed with like the steep up and down. How much vert can I get? I've never tracked my weekly vert. Like I don't care. I was into road racing for a while, and it was like you don't want any vert, like you want to find a flat course, like
and get that leg turnover.
Yeah, you want to go fast, And then it was like, how many feet of vert can I get a week? How many feet can I get in a run? How many can I, So that's the full goal. 2024, get back to 50-mile race, learn how to kind of master the nutrition side because I still feel like that's my weakness there. But yeah, just stack
and
up.
then 2025.
Go after that world team again. It's still
that's awesome.
The race is back on for the. I got the USA jersey in the closet. Now I want to be on the world stage. So
that's awesome. Like, well, nothing but wishing you good luck. On that, and I'm sure if you continue like you have been with your running and your training efforts, I can only imagine the sky's going to be the limit for you.
We got the ecosystem in place now. I think right. So it's like. We have our other good friend Megan Lacey, he's qualified for the world team. She was on that NACAC team that I was on, co-race director with us up at the Boise Front Trail Run. So we train frequently with her, and it's like, okay, we have similar goals, and it does, that helps the belief too when you're like, well, I know people that are doing this, and we run together often. Like we're at the same level. I could do that. Like, and then Jackson at that race, was second and qualified and went to the world. He went to the world.
That's crazy.
And, he kicked my butt in that day, and he'll tell you every day we've raced, I've definitely quote unquote beat him in workouts, but he always has my number in a race. But it's not far, it's not far away, right? It's close enough where I'm like, he can do it, I can do it. Like, why not? So
he's like the guy that does really good on the test every time. It just when it comes test time, he's acing it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I've been kind of diving deeper into the Boise Trail Runners and what it was, 10, 15 years ago, and as it's growing and developing and seeing more and more people come to the area and become more involved in the scene. It is amazing the runners that we have here, the caliber of the athletes, and not just runners, the caliber of the athletes that we have here that people just don't know. You don't have the exposure to. It is awesome to see so much focus and talent really finally starting to get its due around here. And you're obviously a contributing factor to that. Like I said, I initially saw your name popping up on Strava like crazy, taking all these FKTs, and it's awesome to get to know a little bit more about your story. Yeah. And I do have a few more questions here. We've been going for a while, and I appreciate you taking the time, but I want to have an opportunity to let you speak about the Boise Front races, something that you've been involved with now for a few years. You mentioned one of the partners in that. Can you tell me a little bit about that race?
So the YMCA had hosted the race for about 8 years or so. I think it's been going on for over a decade total. We're not sure exactly the first year. I think we've heard conflicting stories, but we're going to say this will be the 11th year.
Okay.
And for most of that time, the YMCA had been taking control of the race. And then 2 years ago, due to a couple factors, they just no longer could put the race on. So they were looking for someone to kind of become the new caretakers. They're like, this is a great event, people love it, but we just we're not up to it anymore. So our good friends Megan Lacey and Alex Mimlis had kind of been part of the group, and then another friend, Shihan, had kind of joined with them. So they had a team already. And then being good friends with all of them, I was like, hey guys, I heard you took on this race and I'd love to help any way I can. Just come up and volunteer. I already signed up. Like I'd never run it before.
I'm going to be there anyway.
Yeah, I'd never actually run it, but I was like, I've always heard it's a good run up at Bogus Basin in August. So like, yeah, I'll come up and help. And then.
Okay. So it's in August then.
Yeah, it's in August. Yep. So they were like, you can volunteer day of, or you could just be one of the other race directors here. They're like, it's all of our first time. So that first year I was like, yeah,
it's a learning opportunity for everybody.
Exactly. And I think we're really fortunate that all of us have kind of similar ideas where we love those learning things. Like the, the trajectory I've talked about, the running, the passions, like our whole race director team is the same way, where we're like, yeah, we've never directed a race. Maybe we should do a couple more. All right, how big can we grow? Can we host mountain champ? We're all schemers.
How far can it go?
Yeah, how far can it go, and how big and how positive can we impact the community is really
that's awesome.
The mission behind it. And I'm like, this is a former YMCA race, so it's all about community anyway.
Absolutely.
But let's put a little bit more. Megan and I have done a lot of these mountain champs. Like we've been to some of these like Cirque series, some of these other bigger events. They're like, can we polish it up and brand it into like
incorporate some of those elements into
it? Make it a little more professional. It's not just professional on like the elite side, but like a professional feeling event for every participant to come up there and feel like
you're part of something big.
I'm part of something. Yeah. So we took it on 2 years ago, and then this past 2023 was our second year. So now we're going into year 3.
That's awesome.
We went from 200 entrants the first year. That's what the Y had as a cap, and they hadn't been reaching it. That was part of the reason too, is it was kind of dwindling and dying off. I think they had maybe just over 100 the last year they hosted it. So our first year, 2022, we had sold out at 200, and we were like, okay, this is good. And then last year we were like, maybe we can bump it up to like 300, sold that out, and then some.
Holy smokes.
Now we're like, do we do 5? Like, where's the limit? And the coolest thing has been, it's been some repeats, but mostly new participants and mostly first-time trail runners. We have 2 races. I'll give the full deets since we've been talking about it. It's the first Saturday in August. That's our race date. I think this year that makes it the 4th, but don't quote me on that. We're looking at a lot of first-time runners. We have a 5-mile race and a 10-mile. The 10-mile, if you are a first-time runner, it's a hard race. Like the 5-mile is a loop on Nordic trails. It has 500 or 600 feet of elevation gain, and it's a challenge.
You got to work at
especially in August.
Yeah.
The 10-mile, we start a little earlier, so it's usually, we've been lucky so far, pretty good weather, starting at 8 a.m. But it's got 2,200 feet of gain.
Oh, wow.
And most of that's in like a 2.5 mile stretch. So you start on the Nordic trails, and then you go up from the lowest point on the backside of Bogus right up to the summit, tag the summit, and come back down to the Nordic Lodge. So
nice.
You're
working at it.
Yeah.
You got to earn it.
You got to earn it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the first Saturday of August.
Yeah.
Is there a website for it or anything like that?
BoiseTrailRun.com.
Okay.
Yeah,
BoiseTrailRun.com.
Nice simple branding there. So yeah, that'll be our 3rd year this year, and maybe more people, but we've started changing some stuff with it. We've like I mentioned, we've kind of flirted with the idea of like, we could host a mountain champs. We're not going to host that this year, and then next year the course will have to kind of replicate the world course, so our race won't work. We don't have 3,000 feet of vertical on technical rocks at Bogus, turns out.
Yeah.
Kind of a limiting factor, which
you can still get a good run up there, but not quite that.
Get a good run. I mean, thankfully for the rest of the year, we don't want that.
Right.
We want runnable trails most of the time. So yeah, we're not going to do that for now, but we did register on a couple of the bigger, like, what do you call it, registered associate races. So we're kind of trying to get the name out there and, build it into, something like that.
See what
that
it can
be
turn
great
into
for the locals and great for first time runners, because I think that's where a lot of our, passions and where our interests lie. But we still like competing, some of us at that higher level.
For sure.
And we want to bring those
still
people
want to have that opportunity.
Yeah, build it up into something where there can be prize money and elites can come in.
Yeah.
I mean, we got those condos right at Bogus. Like, we could put some people up.
Boise is a perfect place to host something like that. The community is building and more attention's coming. It's only a matter of time until it does. So it sounds like you're poised, and working
hopefully
hard.
It'll be us that bring it in first. And if not, we'll support whoever does. But
that's awesome.
Absolutely needs to happen in Boise.
Yeah.
I mean, the setting, we've been to so many of these races that are in just like middle of nowhere, which is beautiful. but they don't have the infrastructure. You can't find a place to stay. Or like, I've done mountain champs races where I've slept in a tent the night before because there was the only place to sleep, and that doesn't help your race.
No.
And we were like, we got condos on site. We got a whole town full of hotels. I mean, Boise's a major city. Like, you
and it's a huge running community to support it.
With 300 plus miles of trails to run on, most of the year. So yeah, we got to make that happen.
That's awesome. And one of the things, a theme that I keep hearing come back, it's community efforts. You're doing your hard workouts and you're getting in and getting training by yourself. But in all these different stories that you've been talking about is you're connecting with other people and you're working out together or working on these projects together. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You have multiple people with multiple strengths coming together to make these things happen. And not only is it better for you, but it's better for the whole. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm rocking a free trail hat right now. And Dylan Bowman,
I noticed that.
His little thing is what free trail running will save the world or something. And
yeah,
I may not agree that trail running is the only thing that's going to save the world, but I do think it can improve the world for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of made me be more into the trail side too. I'm still a diehard track and field fan at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I'm checking every weekend the flow track, what were the race results, Citius Mag and all these other running related things. I'm all in on it. Like, total inside baseball with track and field. But when it comes to where I spend my time, it's like the trails are where it's at. The community side of it is just like, it really can improve people.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't really explain it until you've experienced it. Going to these races, and for me, I came from the trail world. Mine was ultras, and now I'm kind of moving more towards learning more about the track side of things. There's so much to it and so many great things that can come out of it, whether it's road, trail, whatever, just getting outside and getting your body moving.
Yeah. It's so healthy. And like we've seen coming through the pandemic, the mental health crisis. And so one of our initiatives with Boise Front 2 is to get more youth on trails and like offer discounts and incentives for that. Cause it's like, man, if I was in high school and struggling with these things, and I had this outlet, and not just the outlet, but the actual true, like, genuine connections you make. Because that's the other thing. When you're running side by side with somebody, you're not facing them.
Yeah.
The deep stuff comes out, right? Like, the conversations go places they probably wouldn't go if you were sitting there having a coffee, right?
There's nothing like a conversation on the trail,
so
for sure.
All those reasons and more, we're like, we gotta just push the sport because it's super healthy in so many ways.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We got to get the kids while we can and give them a path to potentially something that can completely change their life.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's so great about it is the easy runs, meeting my wife, trying to go after US teams. Each one of any one of those elements that I really think running has brought me. Like, obviously my wife's the most important part of that, but I'm not going to say that going after a US championship, trying to compete was any better than the easy runs on the trails. It's like,
when you love it, it's amazing how running just weaves its way into everything. It just becomes part of your identity and your lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. So it's something definitely want to pass on to other people. And if it's just getting them out there for the first run, it's awesome. I've seen so many new groups pop up. Alex and Megan have give them another plug because they've done a great job with Fleet Feet since they took it over and put in there and starting new trail groups and new social groups and just a lot of stuff targeted to getting people out there for the first time.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's not something you can really explain.
You just have to start doing it and see the long-term benefit once you actually commit yourself to it for a period of time.
Yeah. And if you're trying it by going and running a few miles on the treadmill in the winter on the gym, it's probably not going to translate.
Not
so
going to last.
Anything we can do to get people outside, especially on the trails.
Yeah. Even just whatever the day gets. We had some snow out there, so going out and stomping in the snow, just getting outside and breathing the air. Yeah. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking all this time. I'm going to give you 2 quick questions to wrap this thing up. And this one can be a little bit of a contentious topic, but I'm curious, what shoes do you run in? You mentioned Born to Run, and there's the minimalist and maximalist and heel drop or zero drop.
Yeah.
What do you run in?
Well, I'll say, first of all, I'm not brand loyal.
Okay.
Just anytime I get a chance to talk about shoes, I make sure I say that because I'd love to be brand loyal. So,
just haven't quite got there yet.
Just haven't quite got enough free gear.
Gotcha.
So, I got a good buddy that works at On, and he sent me some shoes now and then. And I am a big fan of their newer trail shoes. So I've worn On for most of the races over the last year.
Okay.
But most of my daily training's in Nikes. I feel like their foam is kind of hard to beat. So when it comes to workouts and stuff.
So are you running the Wild Horse then, or are you running the Terra Tiger?
The Zagama.
Oh, okay.
Zagama for most of my runs. That's been my kind of my shoe of the year for the past year.
I haven't ran in that one yet. I ran the Terra Tiger for pretty exclusively for about a year and a half, and absolutely love that one.
Yeah, it's similar geometry, like, or similar feel underfoot, I should say, the way it works, but it's just a pile of their super foam. So
Okay.
it's like,
So it's a still fairly tall stack height shoe.
yeah. I mean, I got some on right now.
Oh,
They're
that's
like,
these. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
those are
kind
fancy.
of a beast.
Yeah.
But they I don't know, they overmade them or something, so they were cheap on Running Warehouse, so you can pick them up for like $80. So I've been running a lot in these.
I'm a sale guy too. I'll look for last year's models.
Yeah.
Shoes aren't cheap anymore. $150, $200, man. That stuff adds up.
No. So that's why I said I'm not brand loyal. If I can get them free or cheap, that's what I go in. But as for to the first part of the question, maximalist. Like, even when I was reading Born to Run, I was like, that sounds dumb.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because most people go straight to the five fingers, start getting injuries, and
no offense to people who still make it work, but I feel like when you're doing heavy miles and when you do a lot of pavement too, I go back to another favorite Ryan Hall quote, and someone was asking about shoes during his heyday, and he was like, I just call ASICS and tell them to send me whatever their thickest shoe is, and then I do all my miles on dirt.
Interesting.
Like, wow, okay, this is a guy who's the fastest marathoner we have at the time, and he does like 2 workouts of build up on the pavement, and everything else is in super chunky trainers on dirt.
It's just laissez-faire, but just send me whatever you got.
Yeah, send me whatever you got, as long as it's real fat.
Interesting.
So that was like an early insight, and I've tried to do the same. Like, give me those thick shoes, and now everything's super fat but lightweight, so it's like the best of both worlds. Get the best of both
worlds for sure. Okay, so what mantra or a slogan would you put on a running shirt to make it just for you?
I mean, it's going to sound so cheesy, but I think what I had for the longest time in my Strava bio was just easy days easy, hard days hard, race days everything. That's the ethos behind training. It's, consistency first, but once you've mastered consistency, it's easy days easy, all in caps, hard days hard in lowercase, race days everything in extra large caps.
Just give it everything you got.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to ask this, but I'm going to anyway. Now knowing that you're a car guy, what's your dream build?
In my opinion, most true car guys would say, ask me every day, because it'll
change.
Yeah. Because I have some of those friends that it's like my '69 Camaro, and I'm like, all right, if you get one, that's fine, but
right.
You're gonna want something else. So I'm a little more of a realist, where I'm like, I've been liking the idea the last few years of doing a little hot rod pickup. I think because you can find a rust-free chassis out in the West, unlike New England, and now everything's crazy expensive, but you can still find a deal here and there. So I've been looking at the idea of like, I can make some garage space and tinker with a little pickup truck. I think that'd be kind of fun. My other idea, one of my first and still loves, is just old Datsun Z cars. So I would
240.
Yeah. I would. I had a 280 for a while. I would love to get a 240 and do a full electric motor swap.
That would be awesome.
Because I'm working full time in sustainability, and I'm a big fan of all thing electrifies. I don't have an electric car yet, and I'm not the biggest fan of electric cars in general, but I do think we're gonna have all electric cars.
There's potential there, and
I feel like the future. It's when I'm old, it's going to be only electric is what I think at this point. Electric or hydrogen fuel cells. Like, I really do think ice engines are going to die out. So I'm like, I'll just switch now and get used to it. And if I do it on my little fun car, so if I could get a little 240Z,
start converting it there, you'd be in heaven.
Have dual motors, all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
I mean, so light, you can,
I've been researching them a ton, too. I've got some books on it. I was looking at doing it on a little project car. Now I've got a 911 out in the garage, and I've been kind of kicking around what it would take to do an electric conversion there. And then I look at the cost, and think, we'll push that off a little bit.
Well, that's the reason as you brought up the 911, that's the reason the 240Z has always been my dream car. Because when I was a kid, the profile of a 911 was... You can't beat that for a sports car. Nothing could possibly look better.
Yeah.
But I'll never afford one, so I'll go for a 240Z. Of course, now 240Z is for a clean
chassis
there costs about the same price. So maybe it'll end up having to be a 911. But yeah, that was my that fastback shape.
Yeah, just beautiful.
You can't beat that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question.
Okay.
If there was a soundtrack to your life, what would be the title track?
The title track. I'm a huge music fan, so now you just got me going. I don't know what the track name would be, but I've been listening to a lot of 70s metal, so I'm going to say it'd sound like it'd have the guitars of like Sabbath. That's for sure.
Nice.
Like, I don't know what the title track name. It might be just instrumental.
Nice.
But yeah, I like singing along. But yeah, I think a
70s track, metal title track then.
Yeah, and maybe some like tight snare in the background or something. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, for anybody that wants to look you up and find you, how can they do that?
Yeah, sure. So all of my socials have been gradually migrated over to just at MountainButtons. My wife and I have been doing a little YouTube that we're trying to kind of kick off. So we started doing that. And then my Strava is just my name, Dan Button. But yeah, everything else is just at MountainButtons. Pretty much just the YouTube. I have an Instagram, but I've never really understood the allure.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with it myself. I can post on Facebook and figure that out. So I figure I'm good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could do this again and talk even more length about many other
now
things.
That I know about cars, we can do a couple hours on that.
Absolutely. But best of luck in this year, 2024, and nothing but well wishes for 2025 and seeing that dream come true.
Yeah, and likewise, best wishes back at you for the pod. I listened to the first couple episodes. It's coming along great, so I'm excited to keep listening.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll keep going and see where it goes. But it's fun being able to help share awesome stories like this. So thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, take care.
A sincere thank you to my guest Dan Button for joining me on episode 5 of the Run from the Norm podcast. And I would also like to extend my sincere appreciation to you for sharing your time and listening to this episode. You can let me know how we're doing by sending your comments and suggestions to me directly at runfromthenorm@gmail.com. You can also support the podcast by checking out our merch at www.runfromthenorm.com. Our mission is to motivate with compassion, listen without judgment, and inspire with curiosity, one person at a time. I hope we have succeeded. Remember, getting outside for even 15 to 20 minutes a day can do wonders for your mental health, and I wish you well as you continue your journey throughout the day. Please watch for episode number 6 coming soon, and in the meantime, I highly encourage you to run from the norm.